The morning train pulled into the small, dusty station with a shrill whistle that echoed across the barren plains. But for Annabel, it wasn't just another train. It was supposed to carry her new beginning. She had traveled across states, leaving behind the little she knew of home, clinging to the letters of a man she had never met but had promised her marriage, security, and a future brighter than anything her lonely life in the city could offer. The bustle of passengers came and went, reuniting families, sending off young dreamers, and carrying traders with their heavy bags. Yet Annabel remained on that platform, her gloved hands clutching her single trunk, her eyes darting between strangers, searching desperately for the familiar hat described in his letters. The warm smile she had painted in her imagination. Hours slipped by, and the warm morning turned to a blazing afternoon. But no one came for her. The truth began to sink in like a stone tied to her chest. She had been abandoned. Her heart wavered between shame, fear, and defiance as the curious stares of townsfolk pressed against her pride. She fought back tears, telling herself to stay strong, but her soul whispered, "What now?" Just when despair began to root itself, a shadow fell across her, blocking the merciless sun. She looked up and met the steady gaze of a tall cowboy, dust on his boots, hat tilted low, and an expression that wasn't pity, but something else, something grounding. He tipped his hat slowly, his voice deep, carrying a gentle certainty as he said the words that shifted her destiny. "You've been waiting for me." In that moment, Annabel's breath caught, not because she believed him right away, but because he sounded like hope disguised in a stranger's voice. He didn't look like the man from the letters, didn't resemble anything she had expected, but he felt like the answer she hadn't known she was searching for. With the whistle of the departing train echoing behind them, she stood between two choices, to crumble into heartbreak or to trust the stranger who offered her not explanations, but a promise of belonging she could feel in his steady presence. Annabel wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. She, abandoned and alone, now staring into the eyes of a man whose name she didn't even know. And yet his words clung to her heart like a lifeline. The cowboy introduced himself as Matthew Hayes, a rancher who had simply come into town for supplies. Yet when he saw her sitting with that forlorn look in her eyes, something inside him stirred, a protective fire he hadn't felt in years. He didn't ask about the man who left her or the reason she'd come. Instead, he picked up her heavy trunk without hesitation and said she could come along, at least for supper, until she figured out what she wanted to do next. Pride told Annabel to resist, to insist she didn't need help. But her weary soul urged her to accept, if only for a moment's kindness. The journey to his ranch was quiet, broken only by the clop of horse hooves and the faint call of meadowlarks in the fields. Annabel studied him from the corner of her eyes. The rough hands, the sun-darkened skin, the silence that didn't feel cold but protective. When they arrived, the ranch seemed both wild and welcoming, rolling hills, fences in need of mending, and a big farmhouse that smelled faintly of bread and wood smoke. That night, over a simple meal, Matthew finally spoke words that made Annabel's guarded heart tremble. "Sometimes life doesn't give you what you came for," he said, meeting her gaze, "but it gives you what you need." Annabel felt her defenses weaken, not because he offered her romance, but because he offered her dignity, a place where she wasn't just a discarded bride, but a woman worth seeing. Days stretched into weeks, and though she kept reminding herself that she was only staying until she figured out where to go, the truth was she had already begun to find pieces of herself here, laughing at Matthew's quiet humor, feeling the safety in his silence, watching the sun set over the land that seemed to promise renewal. And one evening, as they stood by the corral, stars lighting the velvet sky, Matthew reached for her hand, rough and warm, and said softly, "You may have been waiting for a stranger, Annabel, but you're loved by a cowboy now." Her tears finally fell, but this time they weren't for loss. They were for finding what she never knew she deserved.